Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. And today I want to talk about central auditory processing. And I want to do more than talk about central auditory processing. I want you to understand central auditory processing, and I still want more. I want you to be able to explain it to others in simple terms. Because central auditory processing, for me, is the art of hearing rehabilitation, the art of hearing aid fitting. But before I go there, let me introduce myself. My name is Manfred STOIFL. I'm born, raised and educated in Vienna, Austria. So just up the Danube from here. My main profession is father. I have two sons, Nick and Alex. I'm a hearing aid acoustician. Many of you might know that, what a hearing aid acoustician is, a little bit different from an audiologist. So I do everything about hearing aids, building hearing aids, designing hearing aids, do rehabilitation, everything about hearing and hearing repair, hearing impairment, but not audiological testing as such. An hearing aid acoustician takes over after the audiologist and after the ENT doctor. As you can see, I'm still very young, so I'm just doing this, how many years now? 45 years. The rest is all plastic surgery, what you see here. And currently I'm Director for Program Development for Starkey Hearing Technologies for the developing markets. So today we talk about CABD. Actually, when people talk about central auditory processing, everybody talks about the disability. I don't want to talk about the disability. A little bit, of course, we talk about the disability. But first, we have to understand the ability. What is central auditory processing? Now, let me quickly ask you a question. Can you raise your hands? Who is an audiologist in the crowd? Great. Who are ENT doctors? Okay, perfect. So let's go on. Now, before I go further, the definition of central auditory processing, there is literally thousands of books. The interesting part is each book is written by a different professional. There is neurologist, there is hearing aid acoustician, there is audiologist, there is ENT doctors. It's just multidisciplinary. Now, so that everybody understands, the definition of central auditory processing is when the signal leaves the cochlea, everything what happens after the cochlea is central auditory processing. Now, I want to do something with you. Can you please close your eyes? And no cheating. Close your eyes. Okay, can you open your eyes? What did I do?
Hit the table.
I said close your eyes.
I closed.
Why are you cheating?
I'm not kidding.
So how you know I hit the table?
I heard the wooden noise.
You hear wood?
Yeah.
You hear wood?
Yeah.
You cannot hear wood. That's central auditory processing. Central auditory processing gave you the means to know I did that.
That's correct.
That's central auditory processing. Now, before we go deeper into central auditory processing, let's talk what central auditory processing is not. This is not central auditory processing. This is the ear. This is what the ear does. This is how the ear works. This is for the ENT doctors in the crowd. Now we're looking at what the ear does. What the ear, how the ear works is not the same what the ear does. The ear has one function and one function only: converting sounds into electrical impulses. Converting all components of sounds into up to 36 million electrical pixels and sending it to the brain. That's what the ear does. Not more, not less, that's a lot anyway. So, if we look what happens after the ear, when we are born, still in the womb, in the brain, there is the infrastructure of central auditory processing develops in our brain. This is just a snapshot. There is many more processes going on. And these processes, as you can see, they are fed with electricity coming from the cochlea. And the more electricity comes from the cochlea, the more these processes develop. And actually, it takes many, many years to develop these processes. A baby has no central auditory processing to speak of, just a tiny, tiny little bit. All of this you acquire. Central auditory processing is an acquired skill, something you learn. And the eyes help you, the skin help you, the nose help you, and reason, the mind help you to understand that this was me knocking on wood. Now, if we look at this in a different context, what needs to happen from a sound happening in nature until a human being understands that sound, comprehends? You see, technically that's not a sound, that's a vibration, air molecule movement. Only your brain makes this a sound. So there is many, many things what need to happen. The ears are involved. The ears converting this to electrical impulses. The brainstem is involved. The auditory cortex is involved, or the cortex in general is involved. Then higher brain centers are involved. And this is very difficult to hold. Oh, okay, I don't need to hold it. Look at that. So, now, the next thing is, I said already, you're not born with that skill. When you are born, what you have, you hear. You never hear as well in your life again than like 1 or 2 weeks after you are born. That's when you have your best hearing. Because when you are 15, you already lost part of your hearing. But we talk more about this later. And because you hear, remember from the previous slide, the hearing now pushes the brain to develop all these centers, building the patterns which we later learn to identify and give it meaning. Typically, I hate to talk about language in the context of hearing, because language has nothing to do with hearing. Language is a different animal altogether. But just so to have common understanding, the other thing what develops along with central auditory processing is language skill and vocabulary. And if you look at these lines, you see one follows the other. But the most dominant line is up here. Oops. If you don't hear, the brain has no input. Sound to the brain is like food for your stomach. No sound to your brain, the brain dies. Central auditory processing dies. It doesn't work. There is nothing for it to develop, nothing for it to maintain. My previous colleague had this very nice presentation and she showed aloud fatigue, brain fatigue, fatigue, listening fatigue. I have a slide showing exactly the same thing. Basically what you see here is an fMRI, an animated fMRI. Of course all your ENTs know what that is. An fMRI is a movie looking into somebody's brain while that brain does something. Like we have seen earlier, that brain super busy. And that's not a good thing. Makes you tired, as my colleague earlier said. Gives you fatigue. The same brain, doing the same task, listening to the same task, by repeating it, by learning it, by remembering it, much less brain activity. Still not good enough. As a normal hearing adult, you should have only that little brain activity going on when you're listening in your mother tongue. Now, I'm apologizing, I don't speak Turkish, I can do it in German if you like. You will be tired. You will be tired listening to me in English. Why is that? Because you're listening like that. If you're listening in Turkish, you listen like that. You know the vocabulary, you know the sounds easy. My English sounds with my German accent, oh, that's really difficult. Of course, that should give you a headache. So up to 85% less brain fatigue, brain stress, if your central auditory processing working normal. Remember, we have seen this earlier. Now, let me superimpose on this now the brain activity. Babies sleep all the time, they're tired all the time. Have you not wondered why babies are tired all the time? Because they're thinking all the time. Their brain works like that. As they get older, the brain gets more developed, auditory processing, and also other senses. Sorry, I'm only talking about auditory, but it applies for all other senses. Less effort is needed. And once you reach your 20s, then you have full auditory processing. Imagine 20 years of age. It takes a human to learn 20 years to understand sounds, to develop central auditory processing to its full extent. Now, let's talk a little bit about language again. The basics of every sound, of everything we know, is basic central auditory processing. And basic central auditory processing knows only two things. Difference between tones, not tones, difference between tones. Very few people have absolute pitch. And it knows tact, frequency, rhythm. Out of this, in many variation, very complicated processes, the brain learns to identify and to build phonemes. Out of the phonemes, the brain learns to build syllables. Out of the syllables, the brain learns how to build words. And you know, with words it's difficult. In English, there is one word which can mean 2-3 different things. I'm sure you have the same words in Turkish. So only once the whole thing is in a sentence, you really comprehend it. So why is this so important? Human communication is only 7%. 7% is through words. 38% is through intonation. You see, intonation. I'm pronouncing that. I put emphasis, I put stress. That is more important than actually the words itself. And of course, you see me jumping around, body language. Spoken words, phonemes, rhythms, time, tact is processed on the left side of your brain. Coming from your right ear, majority processing is here. Remember, 7%. 38% is processed, majority on the right side coming from your left ear. Because the right side processes melody, speech melody, tones, intonation and stress. There is no reason why people say you need 2 ears so you don't get run over by a car. That's nonsense. It's true, but it's nonsense. You need to hear from 2 ears because you cannot hear from 1 ear. It doesn't work. The system does not work like that. Especially for language, you want to understand language, you want to understand the joke, you want to understand the meaning in between the lines, you need to hear from both ears. And that's the only reason why you need to hear from both ears. Now, I use this slide a lot. I'm nearly as old as Albert Einstein. To explain something, you need to understand it, not just to know it. The difference between knowing and understanding is, understanding means you can conceptualize it, you can customize it for everybody in the audience to understand it. You can form it around to make sure people understand that. And I have dyslexia and I have ADHD. My brain has no choice. So I thought, let's play Jenga. Everybody want to play Jenga? I have 2 elves here. My 2 elves will help me building a central auditory processing model out of Jenga blocks. You see, I took a whole bunch of central auditory processing, processes, sub-processes and functions and put them on blocks. They're lying here on the stage, a big pile. My elves will come now and we take this pile Sorry, my elves are a little bit tall. I couldn't find small elves. I don't know. That's the problem in the Middle East. The older one is he's a little bit elfy. So now let's go and start with the beginning. The beginning of central auditory processing is not central auditory processing. It's sound. There is no sound. There is no central auditory processing. So let's put all the frequencies, all the sound on the floor now. Ultra high frequencies, medium frequencies, low frequencies. All the frequencies we need to feed our brain, to feed central auditory processing, for it to develop in the first place. This is not there. There will never be central auditory processing developing. Sorry, my head's a little bit slow. What's the next step? The next step, what happens processes in the brainstem. There's many processes in the brainstem. I just took the 2 most important ones, which is temporal, that means rhythm, the things what we mentioned earlier, and frequency discrimination, sorting the frequencies and putting them into the right places. Now we move already into the auditory cortex. The first thing in the auditory cortex is binaural activity image. That means technically you don't hear a sound. Your brain doesn't hear a sound. Your brain sees a sound. It's a pattern. This pattern needs to be built. Once you have built this pattern, you know, sound is incredibly fast. You have to put it in a temporary memory cache, like in a computer. You have done this. Hey, look, my elves now don't get getting ahead of me. then this needs to be accurate. If this is not accurate, it doesn't work, it's useless. It needs to be fast. Sound is incredibly fast. If the brain is slower than the sound, you don't comprehend the sound. Hey, elf, wait for me. Then there is a process, auditory processing within central auditory processing. This is where different sub-processes come together and make the actual picture of the sound you are hearing. And of course, this picture needs to go in a memory. That was in your memory. And the moment I knock here, you picked it from your memory, put it in your conscience and said, hey guy, you knocked on the wood. By the way, that's a song, yeah? Automation. These processes need to function automatically. You cannot think about that. If you think about it, you get brain fatigue. Remember the slide from earlier? Must be fast, instantaneous, automatical. And it helps if you have cognition, if you have reasoning. Reasoning is the key for central auditory processing. I told you it's dangerous in the first row, but you didn't want to listen to me. Then there is apophenia. Apophenia can be a disease, but apophenia is necessary for us to hear. Apophenia means the brain constructs things which you don't hear. The missing parts, the brain just fills in. And you think you heard it. No, you didn't. The brain made it up. Sensory gating. Sensory gating allows you to sleep at night. Sensory gating allows you to listen to me now. Because sensory gating filters out your husband's voice. That's sensory gating, you don't want to hear it. The brain pushes him away. Sensory gating, if you lose sensory gating, you get tinnitus, for example. And you hear noise all the time. Oh, you see, it's good that my elves are a little bit taller. Vision. Vision is necessary to learn central auditory processing. Of course, blind people can also learn central auditory processing, but it's a different process there. The brain rearranges itself. We need even more auditory scene memory. That's such an important function. Oh, I have to make it faster. More automation, more cognition, more auditory scenes, more accuracy. And we smell, touch, every sense feeds into our central auditory processing. Now, we are 20 years old. Now we have a complete central auditory processing working within our cognitive system. Oh, I have one more, sorry. Unfortunately, there's a life cycle for everything. We only looked at the beginning of the life cycle. If I follow this through, like I told you, with 50, you already start losing your hearing. And sorry guys, ladies, me included, see, it doesn't get better there. You lose your hearing gradually, some faster, some slower. Everybody loses their hearing. There's a simple solution. If you don't want to get a hearing loss, you have to die. But maybe that's not such a good idea after all. And central auditory processing also has a life cycle. There is a time when central auditory processing is even better than the sounds you are hearing, but only briefly when you're in your 20s. And then the decline of central auditory processing is driven by the decline of hearing, auditory input, electrical input to the brain, food to the brain. And there is vocabulary. People are always stunned. Somebody with 60, 70 years, with 60, 70, 80 dB hearing loss says, I have no problem. I can understand. Yes, because his vocabulary helps him. And there is one more thing, perception. If I do this, you literally hear clap already, even if I don't clap, because your brain, your apophenia fills this in. So if you have good vocabulary, good perception, your cognitive system is good, you can live and understand language without hearing it. Hearing is not so important to understand language as everybody thinks it is. But there is a terrible, terrible price to pay for that. The terrible price is called mental and cognitive fatigue. We have seen it earlier, I showed it to you. If if I lose my brain skills, my vocabulary skills, my processing skills, and don't have the hearing to help me, I have extreme brain fatigue. So we're getting back to what we have seen earlier. But let me make a little sidestep what hearing and hearing loss really means. This is how hearing an audiogram should look. Because we hear from 20 to 20 kilohertz. I don't know why people have an audiogram which stops at 8 kilohertz. It does not make sense. It doesn't represent the reality. Plus, what you call noise is not noise. Noise does not exist. This is environmental sound. Noise is, if I talk in German, that's noise for you, because it doesn't make sense to you. You decide what is noise. Technically noise, yeah, there is certain white noise, things like that, but what people mostly call noise is not noise. It's just what they don't want to hear. But then you have music, then you have speech. That is your field of hearing. Bad news. Anybody here younger than 15 years? No? Nobody? You all have a hearing loss like that?
Wow.
Exactly. I'm sorry, sir, you are not 15. We get into you in a second. Yeah? We get into you. So with 15, you already lost your ultra-high frequencies. Everybody. We're getting closer to you. With 40, in average, it looks like that. Now, this looks very different than in your clinical audiogram. But look at the numbers. It's the same. I only extended it to 20 kilohertz, where it's supposed to be. So, this is a mild hearing loss. Now we are at your age, at your area. With 60. That's what's in red is what you cannot hear anymore. What's in red is what your brain does not get anymore. That's why you get tinnitus. That's why you get CAPD, auditory deprivation. That's the reason, because the brain wants electricity. You don't give it to it. Most of us in this room, you know, we're aging more and more healthy. Many people will live under 100, maybe even beyond. With 90, works perfect. With 90, you lost 90% of your central auditory input. 90% of your hearing. Language is different. Now, there's another big factor with hearing loss. We have, on one side, we have hearing loss, degree of hearing loss. The more severe the hearing loss, the more important the problem gets, of course. But what people forget is time. Time is the biggest problem in a hearing loss. Not the hearing loss is the problem. The time of how long you let the hearing loss fester in your brain. How long you let your brain be deprived of electricity. That's the problem. And that looks like that. A little hearing loss over a long period of time has the same cognitive impact like a severe hearing loss over a short period of time. Time, it's like cancer. First stage, second stage, third stage, cemetery. This is the same thing. You cannot let it fester. That's why people always say and know, if you have a hearing problem, address it earlier, because your central auditory system needs the electricity, it needs the food. Let's go back to language, what it needs for language. If you lose your basic central auditory function, the function to discriminate two tones from each other and the rhythm, the consequence is you have problems with phonics. The next consequence is you have problems with syllables. Only then you have problems with words. And only after a long time you will have problems with a sentence. Always easier to understand a sentence than to understand the difference between that. Because this is time for the brain. This is a self-perpetuating vicious cycle. It starts with a hearing problem. The hearing problem drives a cognitive decline in the brain. That means the brain cannot process things so well anymore. That drives the fatigue, the listening fatigue, the fatigue to do things, because we don't have the cognitive power anymore. And if we have a listening fatigue, we don't want to mix with people in a crowd, because we cannot understand them. We are embarrassed, so we stay at home. What happens if we stay at home? There is nothing to listen to. If you're alone in your home, you listen to nothing. That means even if you don't have a hearing loss, you have no auditory input. So the thing gets worse and worse and worse and feeds itself. You don't need to do anything. You don't need the hearing to get worse or anything. By itself, it will explode into central auditory processing disorder, into a problem of cognition, into a problem that you cannot process sounds anymore. Let's play Jenga again. Elves, where are you? My elves, coming. So now remember, we started here. We had normal from the bottom. First, we're losing hearing, we're losing sound, we're losing the blue things on the bottom F. Yes. We're losing the blue things means we're losing auditory input to the brain. That's difficult. You see, it's tricky to lose something. The brain wants to keep it. So it's tricky to get it out. That's why it takes time to acquire a central auditory processing. The next thing what you lose speed. Because now you have less auditory input, you lose speed. Then you lose auditory field memory. That means things don't sound the same anymore, but you don't know. Your brain cheats you because the input signal is different. You learn the sound new, and now you have a new sound in your brain. If you fit these people with hearing aids, the first thing they will say, that doesn't sound normal. Yes, it sounds normal, but your memory in the brain is not normal anymore. That drives a loss of cognition. Then we're losing more sounds, we're losing more frequencies. We lose the ability of auditory processing, where all the processes from different organs together are being processed. We're losing more scene memory. We're losing more cognition. We're losing more sound. It keeps on going, the loss of sound keeps driving that. Now we're losing accuracy. The sounds are not accurate anymore. We're losing more speed. We're losing automation. Now, no sound we can process automatically. We have to listen and think. What did you say? What sound was that? Automation is gone. We're losing more of central auditory processing. We're losing more of cognition. We're losing more of auditory scene memory. We lose sensory gating. You all know that your patient lost sensory gating because the moment you turn the hearing aid on, they say, that noise bothers me. Why does that noise bother you? It is there, it's not a noise. It's in the environment. But they lost sensory gating. They lost automation completely. They lost apophenia. They cannot put things together. The mind is not involved in the sound processing anymore. It goes on and on. We lose everything gradually. Then we are left with a rudimentary structure. There's still something there, but that's not enough. That's not enough for you to know what that means. That's not enough for you to understand language. Because these things are here. You need these blocks to have this function in your brain. So what we have to do, we have to bring audibility back. We have to give the people more input. We can do this. With hearing aids, with cochlear implants, we can send more electricity, the auditory pathway up to the brain. We can feed the brain with electricity. Not by sticking the finger in a plug, by simply providing amplification. By providing more audibility, I drive and improve central auditory processing. But slowly, that's a process. It doesn't happen like that. It's not like putting eyeglasses. But you know that. And the problem again, remember, auditory fatigue, mental fatigue. If the brain cannot process the sound and has to think so hard, and then your brain always is in that stage, all the time. If you want to listen to something, every sound is new. You're like your brain, you are 70, but your brain has to work like a baby. Do you think this is healthy? That's one of the main causes of Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's disease, not dementia. Alzheimer's disease, one of the main causes is neural stress, overload, cognitive load, loss of central auditory processing. How do we solve the problem? We are here, the guests of STOIFL, we fit hearing aids. We are hearing aid manufacturer. When we make a hearing aid, this is what we think about it. You are here also to celebrate with us the launch of our newest hearing aid with new technology. The technology in the hearing aid is meant to put this back into that gender set, that the person can regain the skills. But that's not automatic. First, you have to fit 2 hearing aids. You remember why 2? Sounds and understanding, phonics. You need both. It doesn't work. 7%, 38%. What do you want? You want 38%, you want 7%, you want 100%. You need both ears. Maybe this is the most important lesson. When you give people a hearing aid in the first time, make it comfortable. It doesn't need to replace any of this. The most important thing of using a hearing aid for a patient is to use the hearing aid. Even if just 5% benefit, that means 5% electricity going into the brain, stimulating, rebuilding that structure. And slowly, very slowly, every few months, you ask the patient to come back. You make it a little bit louder, you give a little bit more frequency, you remove a little bit of noise cancelling, microphone technology, you give the patient more sound. You see, hearing problem is a problem of hearing too little. Now, hearing rehabilitation means we're giving more sound, more. But this needs to be done very gradually. By giving more sound, we're building auditory memory back in a normal scenario, because the people's auditory memory is just false. They don't know what normal is. Gradually we are replacing this and putting this in the stage of normal hearing, normal memory. By doing this, people can listen without fatigue, without brain stress. Just relax, they can go meet their friends again, they can socialize. Less listening effort, we heard the term listening effort earlier. Now, people hear more, they hear better, they hear easier and they listen easier, but step by step. All of this, your next aim is physical. You know, a hearing problem affects your heart, affects all your body because you're not a happy person. Physical, psychological and cognitive benefits. Of course, cognitive benefits, because hearing drives cognition. Hearing loss is one of the major causes of dementia in general. Of all dementia parts, hearing problems the biggest driver of dementia. That's why at Starkey we say, hear better, live better. You need to hear better, to live your life fullest. But it's a process. It takes time. Maybe some of you fit or use cochlear implants. With a cochlear implant, everybody knows. You program it, you reprogram it, you reprogram it, you reprogram it. Let me break it to you. The same with a hearing aid. Hearing aids, Starkey hearing aids can do a lot automatic. They can automatically reprogram themselves every 3 months. But once in a while, you have to change the parameters. Give the patient more hearing. Expand the brain. Feed more electricity in the brain. Are we playing Jenga again the last time? So now, we have to put everything back. As babies, we learn it. Easy. To lose it. Easy. Now it's not easy. Now we have to put it back. I need 5 volunteers. 4 volunteers. No, I need 5. You are my first 3 volunteers. Number 4. Okay. Number 5, please.
The 4 volunteers.
Yes?
One doctor.
You have been volunteered. You know?
We need some
You
professional.
you have also been volunteered. Now we build it back. Help the elves to build the central auditory system back.
Professional.
We need ENT doctors, we need audiologists, we need psychologists, we need neurosurgeons, we need psychologists, we need every medical faculty to help us building back our central auditory system. Because everything what we have lost, we have to put back in there. But for God's sakes, don't break it, don't throw it over. If you throw it over, you threw over the central auditory system. So one by one. Put in more hearing, put in more auditory. Oh my God, look at that. Oh, yeah. Now you have to reprogram the hearing aid, give a little bit less power.
So many inputs at the same time.
Yes, because that's what you need, that's how it works. Yeah, you need attention, you need a plan, you need a system, you need a plan, exactly. But that's not the plan holding and keep the outgoing processing.
So it's not possible to rebuild it. That's possible to
This?
So let's watch them struggle a little bit. It's always nice to see other people struggle, isn't it? Exactly.
Esra'cığım bizi alkışlamadılar. Bu konuşmacıdan rol çalmaktı. Boş ver sen ben.
We have no insurance, yeah, so if you get insured, that's not on us. But then you're an ENT.
Yes.
How can you get injured building somebody's central auditory system?
I listen to you and learn.
Let's hope I'm right.
Biz fotoğraf çektik.
Please don't leave.
Fotoğraf çektiler.
Before getting
Adam götürecek. Hadi gidip oturalım.
Wait.
Biraz sonra. Gel, come on.
You said you need to practice.
Yes, we
Use your own cancer side to practice it. Normally, ladies.
Gel. Al şey yap.
There's one missing, we bring it to you later. Don't run away, ladies, gentlemen.
Yes.
Or we bring it to you.
While we are here, gel Esra fotoğraf çektiriyoruz. Sunumunu Esra koş.
Come here.
Sen de gel canım. Kızım çekil orada. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So one more thing we say. One thing we make. Remember, we started with that self-perpetuating problem, where one problem chased the other problem, and it grew up into this gigantic central auditory processing disorder situation we have. This took time to develop. It goes in circle, it feeds itself, doesn't need any input, doesn't need anybody to throw a brick down and break somebody's central auditory processing. But how do we fix it? We introduce a little bit of hearing. Just a little bit. A little bit of hearing means new electrical input to the cognitive system. By introducing more hearing, more electricity, we improving the cognition of the patient, the reasoning ability of the brain. That will reduce mental fatigue, listening effort. People can go out again and people get integrated into their society, meeting their friends again, going for a drink, going for a party. The brain gets stimulated, not only hearing. Everything in the brain gets stimulated. Everything in the brain dies if you sit alone at home in a corner. Now what we do, we give a little bit more hearing. A little bit more hearing will drive a little bit more cognitive benefits, which reduce the listening effort, the mental fatigue, and that again let us go out more into society, expose ourselves to more activity, give us more mental stimulation, until finally we are back, we are healthy, we have good central auditory processing, we have good memory, we don't have dementia, or at least we're reducing the effect of dementia. Thank you very much, thank you for listening, and Yeah, any question?
Now I can see you, but
I'm here.
I hear you. Maybe you can sit here. Thank you very much for your very good presentation.
You're welcome.
And I think there was a question to you.
Something more like a second language or other things, before or after 20 years of age, is it make a difference in the future, even if we haven't hearing loss in our old ages?
Yes, the answer is a very simple yes. Society has to change its attitude globally, you know. I have also seen on my previous speaker slide, we don't even have vocabulary. We don't know. Hearing means what? What does hearing mean? I'm listening to something, or what does all of these words mean? Hearing is the main contributor when you are a child to build your whole cognitive system. I have a hearing loss of 40 dB. I wouldn't stay a day without my hearing aids. You know why? I want to hear the noise. And my colleagues know this. When I wake up in the morning, I put on my hearing aids. You know what happens? I hear shh, but I hear like that. The brain adapts to it. Because overnight my brain got deprived of that natural environment sound. I put my hearing aid, suddenly I hear all the noise. And within 2 minutes, the brain, it's gone. I cannot hear the noise anymore. Because I have good central auditory processing. Central auditory processing at any age can be trained. There is lots of ways of training central auditory processing. It's just very unpopular. You know, how many of you have a gym membership? Raise your hand who has a gym membership. Okay. How often are you going to the gym? Don't lie. I caught you already one time.
Very rare.
Very rare. You go every day, I know, yes. We know. But you see, this is the problem. You have to put an effort in it. Humanity has a big problem. We are designed to die at 40 years of age. And we have the audacity to live until 100. Our brain is not designed for that. We have to put an effort in to train our brain, not just swallow pills and go for surgery. The brain needs to be used active all your life, and the earlier you start, the better it is.
What's the best way to train our central auditory processing? Do you recommend anything?
The best way there is actually ways to train your frequency discrimination, your auditory order discrimination. There is specific ways. If you come later to our booth, I can tell you more about that. But there is a very simple way to train your central auditory perception. Listen every day for 1 or 2 hours to music. Music is the best training for central auditory perception. And I know people are not agreeing, and not because I'm Austrian, but Mozart is very special. Because Mozart has a lot of frequency dynamic and intensity dynamic. That forces the brain to jump from 200 Hertz to 16,000 Hertz, back to 800 Hertz. That's central auditory processing by simple listening an hour a day to Mozart or other classical music. But not Wagner or something like that, because boom, 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 that doesn't do anything to your central auditory processing.
So we will listen. Mozart?
Yeah.
But he was dead.
No, that was Beethoven.
Okay. I would like to thank you for your wonderful lecture. During the last 30 years, maybe 35, I listened to many audiology lectures. This is the only one that I enjoy and able to understand. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
You are even a better speaker than myself. But I would like to invite you to my lecture tomorrow. I will give it in English only for you.
I have not played. I will listen. I promise.
My question is, I'm 62 and I'm losing my hearing ability. But now I can just handle without any hearing aids. So, do you advise me to start using hearing aids or just to increase my perception?
I'm confused. You just said you enjoyed my lecture and you listened to me.
Both.
So, your question?
If I start
I know
losing my
I-
ability, do I start?
You don't use your central auditory processing. You use your perception and your language skill to understand language. You are in a perpetual state of mental stress and mental load. You might feel it because you are tired in the evening, not because you are running a marathon. Your brain runs a marathon because you don't give it auditory input. So you make up every sentence. Out of a sentence you understand 50%, the rest, because you're an intelligent person, you put together. But that's an effort you should not take. So yes, get hearing aids on both ears, use them all the time, listen to music, do some other central auditory tasks, and you will have perfect hearing until you're 110.
Perfect. That's my target. And at what level do you advise using hearing aids? 30 dB or 40 or whatever? Is there a number for that?
No, there is no real number in dB. The number actually would come from central auditory stress. So if you have to concentrate to understand somebody, if you have problems hearing in noise, you see, there is a reason for that. Why you have a problem hearing in noise? You have to ask big question mark, why is that? Because your brain cannot process sounds. Why can your brain not process sounds? Because it doesn't have enough input. Even if you have a 30 dB hearing loss, in your age, by the way, I'm 61, so welcome in the club, yeah? So you definitely should use hearing aids. No doubt. And maybe for a month or two you will hate it. But trust me, you will love it. Because it's just nice to hear.
But brain improves with stress.
No.
Brain improves with multisinus.
No.
And processing, it helps.
No, brain, if you have a brain disease, yeah, maybe silence gives you a temporary relief, but we are not talking about Alzheimer's or something like that. We're talking about central auditory processing. Central auditory processing needs input. No input, the whole system collapses. The system also drives the collapsing of cognition. Dementia, the main driver of dementia is not hearing enough. That by itself is more than 20% of all factors playing into dementia. About 20% is hearing, not hearing enough. So if you have a disease, that's a different story, but we're not talking about people with a brain disease.
Okay, do you always advise bilateral on both sides?
How many ears do you have?
2. That's good.
I rest my case.
Wow, they will love this.
But look, very
Thank you.
simple. You want to hear jokes and meaning, or you want to choose meaning or jokes? What do you want to hear?
Both. Then I need to.
Then you
Thank
need both ears. You're welcome.
Dear friends, thank you all of you. And also, Manfred, thank you very much. It's really interesting and wonderful presentation. But we need time. I have also many questions, and during the break, I will.
I'm at my booth. If any of our starting booth, anybody, any questions, I will show you more about central auditory training and so on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for listening.